The rattlesnake's warning came moments too late as Zara Mitchell stumbled backward, her worn leather boots kicking up dust in the parched Wyoming Territory soil of 1878. The bank manager's words had struck harder than any physical blow could have. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Mitchell, but your husband borrowed against everything, the house, the land, even the livestock, and now that he's gone." Mr. Reynolds cleared his throat, uncomfortable with delivering such devastating news to a woman alone. "The bank will be forced to collect in 30 days. Zara stood frozen on the weathered boardwalk outside Sweetwater's only bank, the afternoon sun beating down mercilessly upon her golden-brown hair. At 27, she had never imagined she would be abandoned, left with nothing but debts and broken promises. Thomas Mitchell had swept into her life 4 years ago, all charm and grand plans. He'd promised her the world and delivered only heartache. And now he was gone, vanished with their savings and leaving her drowning in debt she hadn't even known existed. 30 days, she whispered to herself, clutching her thin shawl around her shoulders despite the summer heat. The busy main street of Sweetwater continued its usual bustle around her cowboys leading horses to the livery, merchants calling out their wares, women gossiping outside the general store, all oblivious to the fact that her world had just collapsed. She somehow managed to put one foot in front of the other, making her way home, though not for much longer, it seemed. The small house sat on the outskirts of town with a modest barn and corral. Thomas had claimed it was just temporary, promised they'd build something grander once his investments paid off. Lies, all lies. As Zara approached, she noticed a tall figure standing by the corral fence. He turned at the sound of her footsteps, and she recognized Isaac Aldridge, a quiet cowboy who sometimes helped neighboring ranches with cattle drives. He'd been in town for several weeks, working odd jobs from what she'd heard. "Mrs. Mitchell," he greeted, removing his worn hat. The sun caught in his dark hair, revealing strands of copper. His face was weathered from years under the harsh western sky, but his eyes were kind. "Your mare seems to be favoring her front leg. I noticed it when I was passing by." Zara barely registered his words. "Mr. Aldridge," she managed. "Thank you for your concern, but I—" Her voice broke and she pressed a hand to her mouth. Isaac stepped closer, concern etched across his features. "Madam, are you all right?" She couldn't hold back the tide of emotion any longer. "No," she admitted, tears finally spilling. "No, I am not all right." Before she could stop herself, the whole sordid tale came pouring out. Thomas charming his way into credit at every business in town, mortgaging their property without her knowledge, and finally disappearing 3 days ago with what little money they had saved. Now the bank wanted payment in 30 days or she would lose everything. Isaac listened silently, his jaw tightening as she spoke. When she finished, he simply nodded once. "I should check on your mare," was all he said, turning toward the corral. Zara didn't know what she had expected, perhaps empty words of comfort, but his practical response was somehow steadying. She wiped her tears and followed him to where her chestnut mare stood. "She's got a stone bruise," Isaac said after examining the hoof. "Nothing serious, but she should rest it." His voice was low and steady, like the distant roll of thunder before a storm. "Do you have any poultice in the barn?" Zara replied, grateful for this mundane problem she could actually solve. They worked together in comfortable silence, Isaac gentle with the mare while Zara prepared the poultice. His hands were calloused but moved with surprising tenderness, and Zara found herself studying him. She had seen him around town but knew little about him beyond his reputation as a skilled horseman who kept to himself. "Will you stay in Sweetwater?" she asked suddenly. Isaac glanced up, his expression unreadable. "For a while, work's been steady." "At least someone's prospects are looking up," she said with a bitter laugh. "You'll find a way," he said simply, as if he believed it without question. "I don't see how. Even if I sell everything I own, it won't cover half what Thomas borrowed." Isaac said nothing more, but his silence wasn't uncomfortable. When they finished treating the mare, he tipped his hat and left, his tall frame silhouetted against the setting sun. Zara watched him go, feeling oddly less alone than she had all day. The next morning dawned hot and clear. Zara had barely slept, her mind racing with calculations and desperate plans. She could seek employment, but women's wages were pitiful. She could sell her wedding ring, but it would hardly make a dent in what she owed. She was gathering eggs when she heard the creak of wagon wheels. Emerging from the henhouse, she was surprised to see Isaac driving a wagon down her rutted drive. "Mr. Aldridge," he nodded in greeting, setting the brake. "Thought your mare could use some better feed. Brought some supplies, too." He gestured to the wagon bed filled with sacks of grain, canned goods, and a few tools. "I can't accept this," Zara protested. "I can't pay you," Isaac shrugged. "The mare needs to eat." "And so do I, but pride is sometimes all I have left," she countered. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Then consider it a loan." Before she could argue further, he began unloading the wagon. Zara found herself helping him, carrying smaller items to the barn or kitchen. Working alongside him felt natural, as if they'd done this 100 times before. "You never mentioned what you do," Isaac said as they stored the last of the supplies. Zara brushed dust from her hands. "Before I married Thomas, I was a seamstress, had quite a reputation for it too." "Why'd you stop?" The question was simple but hit her like a physical blow. "Thomas said a gentleman's wife didn't need to work," she laughed without humor. "Turns out I married no gentleman." Isaac nodded thoughtfully. "Seamstresses are always needed out here." "Yes, but I'd need to buy materials, and that takes money I don't have." He said nothing more on the subject, but the next day he returned with a large parcel wrapped in brown paper. Inside were bolts of fabric, nothing fancy, but good, sturdy cotton in various colors, along with thread, buttons, and other notions. "Mr. Aldridge, I told you, found these forgotten in the back room at Whitman's store," he interrupted. "He was selling them cheap." Zara suspected this was another kindness he was trying to disguise, but the fabric beneath her fingers awakened something that had long been dormant: the joy of creation, of making something beautiful and useful with her own hands. "Thank you," she said simply. With the supplies Isaac had brought, Zara set up a small workspace in the front room and put out word that she was taking in sewing. It wouldn't be enough to pay off the bank, but it was something, a small act of defiance against her circumstances. As the days passed, Isaac continued to appear, often bringing small gifts disguised as practical necessities: a basket of fresh vegetables from a farmer who owed him a favor, a repaired fence post that needed replacing anyway. Zara pretended to believe his excuses, just as he pretended not to notice the way her eyes lingered on him when he wasn't looking. 2 weeks after the bank's ultimatum, Zara was returning from delivering a mended shirt when she saw a crowd gathered outside the bank. Curious, she approached, only to overhear snippets of conversation. "Paid in full, they say. No one knows where the money came from. Mysterious benefactor." Heart racing, she pushed through to the front where Mr. Reynolds was attempting to disperse the curious onlookers. "Mr. Reynolds," she called. "What's happening?" The bank manager turned, his expression changing when he saw her. "Ah, Mrs. Mitchell, I was going to send word. It seems your debts have been settled." "What? How?" "A gentleman came in this morning and paid the full amount, every cent." Zara felt the ground tilt beneath her. "Who? Was it my husband?" Reynolds shook his head. "No, madam, it was—" He stopped, looking uncomfortable. The gentleman requested his identity remain private. Something in the way he avoided her gaze made Zara suspect he was lying. "Mr. Reynolds, please, I have a right to know," the banker sighed, lowering his voice. "It was Mr. Aldridge, madam, Isaac Aldridge, but he was most insistent that you not be told, said he'd deny it if asked." Zara stood frozen, the pieces falling into place. The odd jobs around town, his simple lifestyle, he must have been saving every penny. But why would he spend it all on her debts? She found herself walking toward the livery where Isaac often helped out. Her mind whirled with questions, chief among them. How could she accept such a sacrifice from a man who was little more than a stranger? She found him in the back corral, working with a spirited young gelding. For a moment, she simply watched him, his movements fluid and confident as he guided the horse through its paces. When he finally noticed her, he stilled, something like wariness crossing his features. "Mrs. Mitchell," he greeted, removing his hat. "You paid my debts." It wasn't a question. Isaac's expression closed like a door slamming shut. "Don't know what you're talking about. Please don't lie to me, not you." He looked away, his jaw working. "What if I did? Why would you do such a thing? It must have been everything you had." "Not everything," he said quietly. "But why?" She pressed. Isaac met her eyes then, and what she saw there stole her breath. "Because you needed it." Such a simple answer, yet it revealed so much. This wasn't charity, it was something much more profound. "I can't accept it," she said, though her heart whispered otherwise. "It's done. The deed to your property is clear. What happens next is up to you." "And what do you want to happen next?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. "That's not for me to say." Before she could respond, he turned back to the horse, a clear dismissal. Zara stood a moment longer, then left, her emotions in turmoil. That night she couldn't sleep, her thoughts circling like vultures. By dawn, she had made a decision. She dressed carefully in her best dress, a simple blue cotton that brought out her eyes, and walked to the small room Isaac rented above the livery. He answered her knock, looking as if he hadn't slept either, his hair tousled, shirt rumpled. "I want to make you a proposition," she said without preamble. His eyebrows rose slightly, but he gestured for her to continue. "You've paid my debts. I owe you more money than I could earn in years." "You don't owe me anything," he interrupted. "Please, let me finish. I'm offering you a partnership. I'm a skilled seamstress. The ranch has good grazing land. Together we could build something worthwhile." She took a deep breath. "A business partnership to start with. What comes after, we'll see." Isaac studied her face for a long moment. "You sure about this?" "More sure than I've been about anything in a long time." A slow smile spread across his face, transforming his solemn features. "Then I accept." Over the next months, their partnership took shape. Isaac's knowledge of horses and cattle complemented Zara's skill with needle and thread. They started small, Zara sewing practical garments while Isaac broke horses for neighboring ranches. They rarely spoke of personal matters but worked side by side, learning each other's rhythms. Summer faded into fall, and with it came a change in their relationship. The careful distance Isaac had maintained began to dissolve as they shared meals, plans, and eventually, stories of their pasts. She learned he had been orphaned young, raised by various ranchers who needed help, never staying in one place long enough to call it home. "Is that why you helped me?" she asked one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. "Because you know what it's like to lose everything." Isaac considered this, his profile gilded by the fading light. "Partly," he admitted, "but mostly because of who you are." "And who am I?" "Someone who doesn't break even when bent nearly double." His words warmed her more than the woolen shawl around her shoulders. Without thinking, she reached for his hand. His fingers closed around hers, rough and warm and reassuring. Neither mentioned the small gesture, but something had shifted between them, like a door opening to possibilities that had always existed but remained unacknowledged. As winter approached, Isaac suggested they combine their living arrangements. "Just practical," he explained hastily. "Heating two places wastes wood." Zara agreed with equal practicality, though her heart raced at the thought of sharing a home with him. He moved into the spare bedroom, and their daily routines adjusted to accommodate each other. Isaac rose before dawn to tend the animals. Zara prepared breakfast. Evenings were spent in comfortable conversation or companionable silence before the fire. One snowy December night, as a blizzard howled outside, Zara finally asked the question that had lingered since summer. "Why did you really pay my debts, Isaac? The truth this time." He stared into the fire for so long she thought he might not answer. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. "First time I saw you was at church Easter Sunday. You were wearing a yellow dress. You smiled at Mrs. Henshaw's baby, and I thought." He paused, looking almost embarrassed. I thought you had the kindest smile I'd ever seen. You noticed me that long ago. Zara was stunned. He nodded. Noticed you weren't happy too. Way your husband treated you in public made me wonder what happened in private. Zara swallowed hard. Thomas had never been physically abusive, but his indifference and occasional cruelty of words had wounded her deeply. When I heard he'd left, I thought maybe now you'd have a chance at happiness, Isaac continued. Then I learned about the debts. His hands clenched briefly. Couldn't let him take everything from you. So you gave up everything instead, she said softly. Not everything, he repeated his words from months ago, but this time his gaze held hers with unmistakable meaning. Not if it meant a chance with you. The confession hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable. Zara crossed the small space to kneel beside his chair. You've had that chance all along, she whispered, reaching up to touch his face. You just never claimed it. Isaac's hand covered hers, his eyes searching her face. I'm claiming it now, he said hoarsely, before lowering his mouth to hers. The kiss was gentle at first, then deepened with months of unspoken yearning. When they finally parted, Zara stayed in the circle of his arms, her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. I think I've been falling in love with you since you brought that feed for my mare, she confessed. Isaac's laugh rumbled through his chest. I've been lost to you since that yellow dress. That night changed everything. They no longer pretended their partnership was merely business. Isaac moved from the spare room to Zara's, and their days took on new meaning, each moment together a gift neither took for granted. By spring, their small ranch was flourishing. Isaac's reputation with horses brought steady work, while Zara's sewing business had expanded to include fine dressmaking for the wealthier ladies in Sweetwater. They weren't rich, but they were comfortable, and more importantly, they were happy. On the anniversary of the day Isaac had paid her debts, Zara woke to find him gone from their bed. She dressed quickly, anxiety fluttering in her chest until she spotted him in the dooryard, speaking with Reverend Potter. As she stepped onto the porch, both men turned to look at her. Isaac's face broke into a smile that still made her heart skip, even after months of waking beside him. Morning, he called, crossing to the porch and taking her hands. Got something to ask you. In front of the Reverend, she teased, though her pulse quickened. Especially in front of the Reverend. Isaac's expression grew serious. We've been living as man and wife in all but name. I want to make it official. He dropped to one knee, still holding her hands. Zara Mitchell, will you marry me, properly in front of God and everyone? Tears sprang to her eyes. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will. They were married that very day in their front yard with only Reverend Potter, his wife, and a few close neighbors as witnesses. Zara wore a dress of soft blue cotton she had sewn herself, while Isaac donned his best shirt, freshly pressed. The ceremony was brief but heartfelt. When the Reverend pronounced them man and wife, Isaac kissed her with a tenderness that spoke volumes about his love. That night, as they lay tangled together, Zara traced the lines of Isaac's face in the moonlight. I never thought I'd find happiness again after Thomas left, she admitted. Sometimes the worst things lead us to the best things, Isaac replied, catching her hand and kissing her palm. I thank God every day that your first husband was a selfish fool, Zara laughed. That's a strange blessing, but true. If he hadn't left you in debt, I might never have found the courage to approach you, and if you hadn't paid that debt without a word. We wouldn't be here now, he finished, drawing her closer. Summer rolled into Sweetwater, bringing with it scorching days and the news that the railroad would be expanding through their area. Property values soared overnight, and suddenly their small ranch was worth 3 times what it had been. We could sell, Isaac suggested as they discussed the news over breakfast. Buy a bigger spread further out. Zara considered this. But we've worked so hard to build what we have here. True, just thought you might want something grander. She shook her head, smiling. Thomas always promised grander. I prefer what's real and solid. Her hand found his across the table. Like us. Isaac's smile was answer enough. Their decision to stay proved wise. As Sweetwater grew with the coming railroad, Zara's dressmaking business flourished. She hired 2 assistants to keep up with orders, while Isaac's horse training became so sought after he could pick and choose his clients. One evening in late summer, as they sat on the porch watching fireflies dance in the gathering dusk, Zara leaned against Isaac's shoulder. "I've been thinking," she said carefully. "Dangerous," he teased, earning a gentle swat. "I'm serious. We've been blessed with so much. Maybe it's time we shared some of that blessing." Isaac studied her face. "What did you have in mind?" "There are women in town, widows, abandoned wives struggling like I was. What if we helped them? Not charity, but opportunity. Teach them skills, give them work. Help them stand on their own feet." Isaac was quiet for a long moment, then squeezed her hand. "You continue to amaze me, Zara Aldridge." The way he said her married name still thrilled her. "So you think it's a good idea?" "I think it's perfect. We'll start tomorrow." And they did. Zara began teaching sewing classes while Isaac offered work at the ranch to boys without fathers. Their home became a place of second chances, just as they had been given a second chance at happiness. As autumn painted the surrounding hills in brilliant hues of red and gold, Zara received news that changed everything once again. The doctor confirmed what she had begun to suspect: she was expecting their first child. When she told Isaac that evening, his reaction was everything she could have hoped for. Joy, wonder, and fierce protectiveness all crossed his face before he gathered her into his arms, holding her as if she were made of the finest porcelain. "A baby," he whispered against her hair. "Our baby." "Are you happy?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Happy doesn't begin to cover it." He placed a gentle hand on her still flat stomach. "Thank you for this gift." As her pregnancy progressed, Zara continued her work, though at a slower pace. Isaac fussed over her like a mother hen, much to her amusement and the townspeople's approval. Their partnership had become something of a local legend: the abandoned wife and the quiet cowboy who had built a life together against all odds. Spring arrived with warm breezes and wildflowers carpeting the prairie. Zara's time grew near, and with it came both excitement and apprehension. Isaac had commissioned a cradle from the town's carpenter, lovingly lined with bedding Zara had sewn from the softest flannel. Their daughter was born on a perfect May morning, with sunshine streaming through the bedroom windows and meadowlarks singing in the fields. She had Isaac's dark hair and Zara's blue eyes, and they named her Hope for all she represented in their lives. "Look what we made," Isaac whispered, his voice thick with emotion as he held his tiny daughter for the first time. "Something perfect." Zara watched them together, her heart so full it might burst. "From debt and despair to this," she marveled. "Who would have thought?" Isaac leaned down to kiss her forehead. "I would. From the moment you let me help with that mare, I knew we could build something beautiful together." As summer returned to Sweetwater, the Aldridge home buzzed with activity. Their work with the town's less fortunate continued, now with baby Hope as the centerpiece of their family. Isaac proved to be a devoted father, as tender with his daughter as he was with his horses. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, now a family tradition, a dust cloud appeared on the horizon, gradually revealing a lone rider approaching their property. Isaac tensed slightly, one hand moving instinctively toward the rifle he kept nearby. Years in the West had taught them caution, even in times of peace. As the rider drew closer, Zara gasped in recognition. "Thomas!" Isaac's expression hardened, but he remained seated, one arm protectively around Zara and Hope. Thomas Mitchell looked considerably worse for wear as he dismounted at their gate. His once fine clothes were travel-stained, his face leaner and marked by a scar that hadn't been there before. "Zara," he called, not entering their property without invitation. "I've come to make amends." "You're 2 years too late," Isaac said evenly. Thomas's gaze shifted between them, lingering on the baby in Zara's arms. Something like regret crossed his features. "I see that now. I heard in town that you'd married again, that you'd prospered." No thanks to you, Zara replied, surprised at the lack of anger in her voice. Where once there had been hurt and betrayal, now she felt only a distant pity. I know. Thomas removed his hat, revealing hair streaked with premature gray. I lost everything I took and more besides. I've come to pay what I owe. We don't want your money, Isaac said. Maybe not, but I need to give it all the same. Thomas reached into his coat and withdrew an envelope. It's not everything, but it's a start. After a moment's hesitation, Isaac nodded for him to approach. Thomas placed the envelope on the porch steps, then stepped back. I am truly sorry, Zara. She studied the man she had once loved, searching for any remnant of feeling. Finding none, she nodded her acceptance of his apology. I hope you find peace, Thomas. I doubt I deserve it, but thank you. He looked at Isaac. You're a fortunate man, Aldridge. I know it, Isaac replied simply. Thomas mounted his horse and was gone as quickly as he had appeared, leaving only a swirl of dust and the envelope on their steps. Later, after Hope was asleep in her cradle, Zara found Isaac sitting on the porch, the unopened envelope in his hands. What should we do with it? She asked, settling beside him. Isaac considered the question. Add it to what we're already doing, help more people, give more second chances. Zara leaned into his embrace, overwhelmed with love for this quiet man who had changed her life with his selfless act. You know what I think about sometimes? She asked. What's that? That day at the bank when I learned Thomas had left me in debt, it felt like the end of everything. Isaac's arms tightened around her. And now, Zara smiled up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Now I know it was just the beginning. As they sat together in the gathering darkness, surrounded by the home they had built and the love they had found, Zara marveled at life's unexpected turns. A debt that should have destroyed her had instead led her to the greatest happiness she had ever known, all because a quiet cowboy had paid it without a word, asking nothing in return but eventually receiving everything her heart had to give.